RBC Canadian Open is right around the corner. What can we expect from this year's tournament? Hey everyone, welcome into another edition of On Tour with Jon McCarthy, presented by Callaway. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun national golf writer Jon McCarthy. And John, as we know every year, pretty much, Rory McIlroy tends to make his way to the Canadian Open, and this year will be no different. That is always good for the tournament, of course. But interestingly enough, he will not be playing at the Memorial this week, Jack Nicklaus's tournament. Are you surprised at all? What do you make of that news?
Well, I'm not exactly surprised he's not at Memorial this week, but I have been very surprised by some of the decisions he's been making recently. Um, After the Masters, this was basically the Rory celebration tour. I mean, he'd accomplished the career Grand Slam, which he'd said his whole career that was the goal as a child. So he'd accomplished everything he'd ever dreamed of, and he even said, "If I don't do anything else, I'll be happy." So this year really was set up just to be like a celebration of Rory, and it was very easy, like a 1 foot putt almost. But then at the PGA Championship, Rory didn't speak to the media after the end of any round. So 4 days go by, Rory doesn't speak to the media. He wasn't playing great. It was a very bizarre decision. His driver failed testing early in the week, and perhaps that got him upset. We don't really know because he hasn't spoken, and it's very weird because, like I said, he had all the good graces of everybody going into that tournament. So now there's a bit of a cloud of what's going on with Rory McIlroy that was really didn't. It was a big mistake on his own part because it didn't have to be like this. He literally could have said at the end of any round, "Listen, guys, I got 2 minutes. I'm busy," and answered a couple questions. Scotty Scheffler's driver also failed testing, but he addressed it very quickly and very easily. He just said, "Yeah, after you hit 1,000 or thousands of balls with the same driver, it changes a bit and it can fail testing." So that's sort of all Rory had to do. But then Rory goes 4 days without speaking to the media. He leaves the PGA. He's not at Memorial, and then word comes out. Well, Jack Nicklaus said in his press conference that no, he didn't give me a phone call, which might not seem like a lot, but when you have a golf superstar skipping a Legends tournament, a phone call is sort of the normal thing. So now we have Rory not talking 4 days in a row, Rory not calling Jack, and a story that didn't have to be a story has become one. So he's going to make his first appearance at the RBC Canadian Open, and we're going to hopefully get some answers as to what's wrong with Rory McIlroy or what's going on in his head. It is very strange. Someone should have given him some better advice because, like I said, it would have been a very easy thing. Guys, I got 2 minutes, and he could have cleared the air with some of these things. As it is now, we're all left wondering what's going on with Rory McIlroy.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting in the lead up to next week's tournament, which, as we know, will make its debut at TPC Toronto and Caledon. I'm sure a lot of people are very interested to see how this course is going to play for these golfers. What do you think when you look at this course and the way it sets up for the tournament next week?
Well, full disclosure, I'm kind of happy because I'm sitting here 15 minutes from TPC Toronto in my basement, so it makes it a lot easier for me. But it's going to be very interesting. TPC Toronto, formerly Osprey Valley, it was sort of a hidden gem in the GTA 20 years ago. Everyone, public golfers, loved it. The 3 courses they had there were fabulous, and it's anything but hidden anymore. It's now going to be the home of the Canadian Open for several years to come. It's a huge facility, and that's the biggest pro it's got going for it. Is there's basically no end to the amount of real estate they have to work with, which has been a big sort of hurdle for the Canadian Open. They've been playing at these very storied, wonderful golf courses, Hamilton Golf Club, St. George's, but the problem with those courses, St. George's, right, in Toronto, is a lack of room because golf tournaments have gotten very big. So that's what this tournament especially has going for it. They have all the room to make a very modern tournament in everything they sort of dreamed of. And that's what this facility is hopefully going to become because Golf Canada has moved its operations there. It's going to be the de facto home of the RBC Canadian Open, and the years that it's not hosted at an old private club, which only might want to host it once every 4, 5, 6 years. So we're going to be seeing a lot of TPC Toronto. The issue would be it's fairly far from the city of Toronto. So a draw for some of these golfers is they get to go to eat out in a great city, great restaurants. So that will be it'll be a difficult logistically there getting to a place that's a fairly rural area, not that close to the city. It's pretty close to the airport, but there will be hurdles. But this is not an experiment. This is the future. So they're going to make it work one way or another, and I think they're going to pull it off wonderfully. It's everything looks great, and there's a lot going on there, as people are going to see next week.
Well, after Canada, it is the U.S. Open at Oakmont, John, in the season's third major. Who do you have your eye on heading into that tournament?
Well, it's going to be great, and that's one other reason Rory's not teeing it up this week in Memorial, because he's going to play the Canadian Open, and then he's going to be going right to the U.S. Open, and then after that, there's another elevated event, the Travelers. So he's going to be playing 3 weeks in a row, and he probably didn't want to play 2 weeks in a row leading into the U.S. Open. So that makes sense why he's not playing this week at Jack's tournament. But what I'm looking for at the U.S. Open is whether this great run of champions at major championships can continue, because it has been a great year and a half so far. We had, if you look back, going to last year's beginning of last year, we had Scotty Scheffler win the Masters, Xander Schauffele win the PGA Championship, Bryson DeChambeau win the U.S. Open, back to Xander at the British Open, and then we get Rory and Scotty Scheffler again this year. So it has been just a great row of champions at these majors, and if that can continue, it's what sort of the golf world dreams of. It's what the golf fan wants. And they're going to Oakmont, which is like the U.S. Openiest of U.S. Opens. This golf course, they sort of say they could host a U.S. Open on a day's notice, because it is a brute test. The rough is always crazy, and the greens are lightning. The saying at Oakmont is, we don't speed the greens up for the U.S. Open, we slow them down. So it's going to be a classic U.S. Open layout. So I'm looking forward to, if we get another great champion, and just seeing what this golf course can dish out to the players.
Of course, we're always keeping an eye on the Canadians. I know when you and I spoke last ahead of the PGA Championship, you mentioned Taylor Pendrith as a guy that could be good in that course. Of course, was a big bomber, but as you mentioned, this one's a little bit different with the way things are always set up at the U.S. Open. If there's one or two Canadians that you feel could be in the mix come the U.S. Open in a couple of weeks, who are you looking at?
Yeah, we're going back to the well. I mean, Corey Connors and Taylor Pendrith are the guys I have my eye on. Taylor Pendrith, the beauty of him is that he's built for these long golf courses and getting out of that thick rough. So I spoke to him about that at the PGA Championship, and he said, yeah, it is great for his confidence, knowing that the best skills in his game tend to show at the toughest golf courses, the longest, gnarliest, rough golf courses. So that's basically almost every major championship aside from British Opens. So he's very confident, and he's coming off a fifth place finish at the PGA Championship. He was just the first Canadian in 20 years to have a top five finish. As good as Corey Connors has been in majors, he hasn't cracked that top five. So it had been 20 years. Pendrith has got his game going, so I'm very interested in how he's going to do. And then Corey Connors is quietly having a very good season. He's 20th in the world right now. He came in 6th at the Players Championship, 8th at the Masters, and 19th at the PGA Championship. So he's having, a very, very good year. The thing with Corey Connors is always he gets himself in contention. Can he get that putter to work with him when it matters most on the weekends at majors? And the thing is, it's sort of crunch time for this generation of Canadian golfers, because they're not young anymore. They're approaching their mid-30s. Nick Taylor's already in his mid to late 30s. So this group of golfers, they've done so much for the game in Canada. They've won tournaments. All of them have won multiple tournaments. But at some point, we got to hope one of them is going to break through and win a major championship. Because if you look at the generation behind them, we don't really see the next great Canadians coming up. So these guys, the time is now. And you get the sense that they all know it, that they're ready and the time is now. So it's going to be an exciting time in the next few years to see if one of them can hopefully break through at a major championship.
Yeah, it feels like just yesterday some of these guys were getting started, but here they are now, like you said, in the prime of their careers. We'll see how things fare, beginning with the Memorial Tournament this week, heading into the Canadian Open next week. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Jon McCarthy, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.